Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. This is okay now. Today we are going to dive into one of Oscar Wilde's masterpieces, The Happy Prince. We will start with the summary of the story and then we will dig into the analysis. We will look at themes, characters, and literary devices. So let's jump right into it. Summary. Once upon a time, a little swallow was traveling to northern Europe and stopped to rest at the feet of the Happy Prince statue for one night. He planned to fly to his friends in Egypt the next day. As he was about to go to sleep, a large tear fell upon the Happy Prince's eye. The swallow was puzzled by the statue's weeping face. Then the statue explained that when he was alive, he enjoyed a luxurious life, completely unaware of the misery his people endured outside the palace. But after he died, he was placed on a pedestal as a statue, overlooking and witnessing the darkness of the city. The Happy Prince, adorned with precious stones and gold, asked the swallow to deliver these riches to the neglected people. And even though the swallow could barely stand the cold, he agreed to help him. So throughout the story, the swallow delivered the ruby from the statue's sword hilt to a helpless mother with an ill child, one sapphire eye to a starving young playwright, and the other eye to a little match girl. He also spread the Happy Prince's golden leaves to the poor children of the city, easing their hunger. As the swallow grew weaker in the harsh European weather, he continued to serve the Happy Prince and tell him marvelous stories. When he could no longer survive, he bade farewell to the statue with a kiss on the lips. After his death, the heart of the Happy Prince snapped into two. Because the statue was seen as hideous and useless without his precious stones and gold, the people of the city melted him down and threw his broken heart onto a dust heap. And at the end of the story, God asked his angels to bring him the most precious things in the city. They brought him the dead swallow and the statue's heart. And God made the swallow a singer in the garden of paradise and the Happy Prince his praiser. Now we will analyze the story starting with the theme of sacrifice. The Happy Prince sacrificed his precious stones and golden leaves to save the poor from starvation, disgracing the materialistic judgment of society on his appearance. On the other hand, the swallow also sacrificed his romantic life, including visiting beautiful monuments and meeting those with his friends in Egypt. After the Happy Prince donated his eyes, the swallow decided to become his messenger and storyteller, enduring severe weather, which led to his death. So the second theme is compassion. The Happy Prince felt compassionate for his people after becoming aware of their harsh lives. He was bitterly weeping for the misery, regretting the false fantasy he once had about life outside the palace. And even though the swallow disliked children because they used to throw stones at him, he accepted to help the weeping Happy Prince out of compassion. The narrator even evaluates the swallow by saying he has a good heart. The third theme is happiness. People believed that happiness was all about possessing fancy things and meeting social standards. The happy prince himself said, "The living always believe that gold can make them happy." So, although the gilded happy prince was very sad, people were blind to his feelings. Ironically, at the beginning of the story, the sensible mom said to her crying child,
"Why can't you be happy like the happy prince?" She continued. "The happy prince never dreams of crying for anything."
Also, the disappointed man said in the story,
"I am glad there is someone in the world who is quite happy."
So, even though the happy prince was made of fine golden leaves, sapphire, and ruby, he felt terrible. But once he gave them all away for the sake of goodness, he felt happier because he realized that true happiness comes from love, compassion, generosity, and kindness. So the fourth theme is materialism. As I mentioned, the story started with people appreciating and praising the statue of the Happy Prince based on his physical appearance. When he sacrificed his precious stones and gold to the poor, he became seen as ugly and worthless. For example, the mayor and the two councillors described him as little better than a beggar. And the art professor explained to his students,
"As he is no longer beautiful, he is no longer useful."
So, Oscar Wilde criticized a society that evaluates human usefulness based on their looks and material wealth. Materialism prevents people from sympathizing with others. While people were preoccupied with social standards and appearances, the statue, ironically, could be seen more humane than the humans, as he freed himself from materialistic ideology and felt the suffering of the poor. And only God and his angels didn't judge things based on appearance. Although the prince's horse and the bird were shabby and worn, they were still the most precious things in the city to them. Last but not least, social injustice. Rich people were ignorant and careless about those outside their social status. For them, the poor was the other, and their misery didn't matter. When the happy prince was alive, he had the luxurious life, playing in the garden and dancing in the great hall, ignoring the true sadness in the world and believing that the outside was as the same as the inside of his social class. This reflects a society where everyone puts their own comfort first. So now we're moving to characters. Starting with the happy prince who lived as a human, and after his death, he was placed as a statue at the top of the city, which marked a turning point in his understanding of the world. He later explained a final transmission of becoming a praiser to God. So let's explore his character both as a human and as a statue. So, as a human, he couldn't feel the misery of his people with a human heart. He was limited to his social class. He saw life as beautiful and fair. He believed that gold was happiness. He believed that pleasure and joy were marvelous. But as a statue, he could feel the misery of his people with his lead heart. When he was placed at the top of the city, above all social classes, he could see the hardships of his people. He understood the power of love, compassion, kindness, and generosity. This can make people happy, not the gold. And he asserted,
More marvelous than anything is the suffering of men and women. There is no mystery so great as misery.
So the second round character to analyze is the swallow. The bird's life can also be divided into two: before meeting the happy prince and after meeting him. So before meeting the happy prince, the swallow couldn't be rooted in one place, deciding to give up his relationship with the reed. He was a free dreamer and romantic. He wanted to experience life joyfully, visiting one monument after another and having courtships with beautiful females. He was living for himself and his fantasies. But after meeting the happy prince, the swallow decided to root himself with the helpless prince in one place out of compassion. He was no longer free, but had this mission to serve the prince. And as a romantic, he always had an emotional reaction toward the prince's tears. So he ended up letting the power of love guide him, and he became living for his lover, the happy prince, not for himself. Now, we're moving to literary devices, starting with symbolism of the happy prince. So the happy prince reflects two different worldviews. First, as a human in the wealthy bourgeois world, and then as a statue overlooking it all. So as a human, he was all about materialism, enjoying the luxuries and not seeing the suffering around him. But ironically, as a statue, he showed the true essence of a compassionate heart. And number two, we have the swallow, which symbolized loyalty, love, and sacrifice. At the beginning of the story, he sacrificed his summertime with his friends to stay with the reed, and later he gave up joining his friends in Egypt to help the happy prince. And because he loved him truly, he endured harsh weather until he died. And number three, gold and jewels. So the golden leaves and precious stones symbolized material wealth that people prioritize over human values. And number four, Sanssouci, which is a French name of a palace where the happy prince lived. It means without worry in English. This name symbolized the isolation of the rich people in their perfect world where problems and suffering seemed non-existent. And number five, heavenly reward. At the end of the story, when the prince and the swallow were brought to heaven by angels, this symbolized the ultimate recognition of their true virtue, because they gave up material things in life and were rewarded beyond earthly life. Then, as a second literary device, we have personification. Wilde personifies the statue of the happy prince and the swallow, giving them human emotions and actions as the following.
The eyes of the happy prince were filled with tears, and tears were running down his golden cheeks.
This literary device allows the readers to connect with them on a deeper emotional level. And then we have imagery in the description of the city. So Wilde described the parts of the city highlighting the social inequalities. For example,
So the swallow flew over the great city, and saw the rich making merry in their beautiful houses, while the beggars were sitting at the gates.
Also, there is imagery in the description of the statue. The happy prince is depicted in detail with golden leaves and precious stones, emphasizing his initial grandeur, such as
He was gilded all over with thin leaves of fine gold. For eyes he had 2 bright sapphires, and a large red ruby glowed on his sword hilt.
And my favorite one is irony. The irony lies in the fact that the happy prince is not happy at all, but deeply sorrowful upon seeing the suffering around him. I am the happy prince. Why are you weeping then? Asked the swallow. And then we have foreshadowing. The swallow's initial decision to stay with the happy prince for one night foreshadows his eventual dedication and sacrifice for the statue. For example, it's very cold here, he said, but I will stay with you for one night and be your messenger. Thank you, little swallow, said the prince. The next literary device is contrast, wealth versus poverty. And the differences between the prince's past life of luxury and the present suffering in his city highlights social inequalities. For example,
When I was alive and I had a human heart, answered the statue, I didn't know what tears were, for I lived in the palace of Sans Souci, where sorrow is not allowed to enter. My courtiers called me the happy prince, and happy indeed I was, if pleasure be happiness. So I lived, and so I died. And now that I'm dead, they have set me up here so high that I can see all the ugliness and all the misery of my city. And though my heart is made of lead, yet I cannot choose but weep.
the last one is pathos, which is a description of the sick child asking for oranges with nothing to drink but a river water, highlights the desperation of the poor, evoking deep sympathy and sorrow. And that's it. We've reached the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed our journey through Oscar Wilde's The Happy Prince. And please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And feel free to suggest any short stories you'd like me to analyze next. And goodbye. See you in the next video. Bye.